It would not have been possible to produce all of the sessions and content for Punchback Print and bring you all of this content for free without the help of our amazing sponsors. So without further ado, here is a quick word from one of them.
The print industry global output is forecasted to grow by 65% over the next 10 years to reach £183 billion by 2029, driven by large-scale diversification into package printing, as well as on-demand printing, data-driven personalization, and direct mail.
Welcome to the Future of Retail Print discussion. I'm excited to be here. We're part of the IPIA's Punchback Print event, which we're really delighted to be supporting. I'm Marcus Timpson. I'm the co-founder of Future Print. We run virtual events and a consultancy called FM Future with a speciality in communications for advanced print tech. I'm really happy to be here today. I've got a fantastic panel. And we've just been talking already, so we're just warming up. So I know it's going to be a great discussion. Clearly, COVID's impacted retail hugely, and as we were just saying, I think we're only really beginning to see perhaps the impact going forward. Clearly, there's some adverse impact, but equally there's hopefully some positive changes that are taking place going forward. And I guess as we go through the discussion through Joanna, we're going to talk to you about with a speciality in packaging from PhD Marketing. We're going to have a look at the world of POS with Steve Lister, who is a global innovation retail expert with a speciality in POS. So welcome to you both. And then from the world of textiles, Mark Jarvis heads up WTIM, which is a incredibly successful publishing and event organization with a speciality in textiles. And we're also joined by Dave Gray from Rico Europe, who I know I've got to know more recently in the last couple of years, has fantastic expertise and experience across print tech. So I've built you all up now, so you better be good. So I'm going to start things off with a couple of intro slides. So doing some research around the change and everything else, McKinsey have over the past couple of weeks released some really interesting research, and I think often these things underline what perhaps we're already sensing and seeing. And the Great Acceleration Report says this, that just as an earthquake produces a sudden release of pent-up force, the economic shock set off by the pandemic has accelerated and intensified trends that were already underway. So I think we're going to have a look through this discussion as to whether those trends are actually genuinely new, caused by pandemic, or they were already present, they were already happening. And as we were just saying, actually, are we really in 2020 now with the world of retail, or are we actually in 2030? Has this just accelerated change significantly? Another report they've just released, McKinsey, around consumers in 2020 and beyond. And the key pillars they're looking at is massive growth in e-commerce, massive interest in discount retailing, as you'd expected, as the economic pressure starts to be felt. We're also seeing a little in what they call purchase promiscuity, which is where people are deviating away from their normal shopping habits and perhaps their normal brands and trying new things, partly through necessity and partly through what they call promiscuity. Digital transformation. So I think we're going to discuss this too in terms of supply chains and how things are actually reaching people, how digital is enabling that, and how the interest in that is growing. Following on from that, automation. So how is automation helping people and brands and retailers get products into stores to actually meet a change in demand, a rapidly changing demand? And what McKinsey advises that now's the time to really be transformative. KPMG have also done some research into COVID-19 and changing retail. It's an interesting one here that 43% of Britons actually feel uncomfortable shopping other than in supermarkets. So obviously as lockdown begins to ease, people are going out, There's 43% of people don't really want to do that. What does that mean for retail and for retail printing? And over a quarter of respondents to a separate survey by Retail Economics said the crisis would actually permanently change the way they shopped. So again, that's another sort of hard impact that perhaps we're starting to try to understand at the moment, and I know the panel will help us do that. KPMG also, and this is often telling us what we already know, but I thought it was useful to share in any case. Shelves were stripped clearly at the very beginning with the basic necessities. And what this has led to is they call range edits. So, you know, quietly, people think this will be retained going forward. And perhaps the attention for brands and for retailers is to start looking at innovating perhaps at higher levels instead of the lower levels, just in terms of, I guess, margins and so on. Marketing Week did some research with Bazaar Voice in terms of priorities for shoppers. According to this survey, interesting point here was that respondents' main priorities before pandemic were quality, price, and brand. But now they're saying actually it's more about availability, price, and quality. So that's shifted. Whether or not that remains once we get past COVID, that's debatable, I guess. So what I'd like to do now is invite Joanna up to the virtual stage, as they say. I'll just sort of talk a bit about your specific area of expertise, Joanna, regarding sort of packaging.
Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to talk to everybody today. My background is that I was in the plastics industry for 14 years with Dow Chemical, which brought me into the plastic packaging side of the industry. I then became head of European marketing for liquid ink and sheet fed inks in Europe for Sun Chemical. And then latterly I worked for Limpact Group as head of R&D, innovation and marketing, again in plastics thermoforming. But through that period, I've retained a role on the board of FESPA, which is the European Flexographic Industry Association, essentially the trade association for the flexo print sector, which is alongside litho the main print technology for packaging today. And 2014, I set up my own marketing company. So I work with approximately 20 clients in print and packaging, right through from artwork design and repro through to producers of presses and hardware, software and so forth. So I've got a pretty good feel for the industry. I'm kind of a jack of all trades and master of none other than marketing, but I do know a lot about the different sectors. Do you want me to push into the first question, Marcus?
Yeah. But I mean, that's what some of the research is pointing to, that perhaps, well, bricks and mortar retail was under pressure anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, if you look at the pre-COVID scenario to now. If you look at grocery retailing, which feeds about, well, 50% of global volumes of packaging end up in the food and drink market. So you can guarantee if you're eating and drinking, that market will be booming. And that's exactly what we've seen through COVID was, first of all, panic buying, stripping of shelves as everybody tried to secure their own goods in the, you know, I had my garage with stuff in, which, you know, I was part of the problem, I suppose. And the packaging industry had to feed that. It had to refill supply chains. So in contrast to the commercial print sector, food packaging has really remained relatively stable. We've had huge volatility with stockouts and supply chain issues, but it very quickly settled down. And we're looking at sort of fairly normal demand at the moment. In terms of the packaging sector itself, the real ramification from COVID has been the ceasing of all new product development. So what you've not seen when we've had the good sunshine days is new innovative barbecue packaging in your local supermarket. Everybody's relied on the SKUs that they had last year. You know, I'm even seeing, I saw Easter eggs in my local co-op this week on sale because they're just not sold. So there's no innovation going on, and many of the brands that are involved in that sector immediately furloughed anybody in colour management, sort of category lead, marketing, new product development. That all went out the window. The game was now availability. Can we get what we do well onto the shelves across the UK and across Europe. So yes, we had stockouts, and that was clearly due to the sheer volatility. But we also had scenarios, and it's the one I always throw up, which was flour. Everybody suddenly turned to home baking because we're locked at home. Can we do something with our children? Can we, you know, have a fun activity to keep us all amused while we're at home? Everybody starts home baking, and suddenly flour goes off the shelves. Now, everybody assumed that the flour mills had shut down, but that was completely incorrect. What had happened was the paper bag that goes onto flour today is actually quite a unique, it's an old-fashioned packaging technology that doesn't go into many applications. So a little bit of sugar and flour, and that's about it. So we just couldn't supply sufficient paper bags for the flour industry to keep the product on shelves. And that meant flour at the likes of Sainsbury's in some regions was out for nearly 12 weeks. So it's been an incredible period of volatility. I think the interesting part of it has been the transition online. It's been talked about for many, many years. Pre-COVID, you were looking at about 18% of grocery retailing online. At the peak in May, you were looking at more like 45% of shoppers online. And that's now falling away again. The last data I saw, we were more like 35% remaining with online shopping. So the big question is, are they going to stay online? Are we going to see essentials continuing to be ordered online, and then perhaps a new shopping experience for perhaps luxury goods and things where we want to, I call it kick the tires. We actually want to feel the product, perhaps try it on, experience it in some way rather than relying on the online model. But it's quite clear from a health, safety and hygiene perspective, what we call the silver surfers have embraced online, being able to stay at home, self-isolate, get all their shopping delivered safely to the door, has stopped people who struggle having to get out into our supermarket structure. And for the brands and the retailers, it's all been rather a shock. So some of them have been set up extremely well. If you look at an organization like Next that has been working strongly on its e-commerce model for several years, it can deliver under 24 hours. Times were booming. I'll be very interested to see the next statistics, other than they will be hit by clearly the economic recession side of COVID. People like Boots, in contrast, or Holland and Barrett have completely lost their footfall. They've closed stores in the major city centres. And in essence, a lot of the website programs that they've been using have fallen over. Boots had a horrific time. They had 200,000 consumers at one point, all trying to get online. So,
Joanna, when you mentioned that, that's interesting, because you look at a retailer like Primark. Primark does nothing online. Doesn't even have an online presence. So they went from billions and billions of sales to zero. And you know, and even now they're even saying that they are not going to pursue an online strategy. That, you know, so it's incredible, like you say, you know, you've got these retailers that we know, the Boots and Next, but you take a global brand like Primark, who's just like, no, we're not even going anywhere near online. There are big reasons for that, by the way, which probably we won't go into right now, but it's interesting that what you say, some people have embraced it and accelerated it, and some people have just really still said, no, it's not for us.
And therein lies the challenge, and I would transfer that right the way through to the packaging sector, in that those printers and packaging companies that are embracing digitalization, and I was really interesting to see your comments from McKinsey, Marcus, those printers and packaging companies that are embracing digitalization, connectivity of the supply chains, automation of their workflow processes, are the ones that have coped with all of this. Those that are still stuck in traditional methods of managing their businesses and kind of fingers crossed and hoping for the best are struggling, because the volatility is totally unpredicted. The other big sector, and I'll let somebody else take over in a moment, the other big change for packaging has been the impact of the MPD side of things. So if we're not doing promotional work, or we're not doing range refreshes, the repro sector is going to be hit very, very hard. They're relying on new jobs to feed their business, and that's been probably the one part of the industry that's been hurt. To put that in context, and I've talked about this before, the Brands Museum in London, you can go and visit there and see I don't know, the Heinz soup can from the 1960s, the Heinz soup can from the 1970s. If you went to see your Heinz soup can now, you could probably look at a different can every 6 months. In fact, the statistics indicate that brands prior to COVID were range refreshing every 6.6 months on average. It's scary. Now, what that's driving is huge demand for short run, fast turnaround, pilot style print runs, testing products around the market. And it's all about retail competitiveness. If you're competing in an omni-channel world, both online and in store, you're grabbing market share through promotion, and that is driving and feeding the print and packaging industry. What we've seen since COVID is absolutely right, is the range editing, the stripping back of SKUs. You know, I remember with ketchup, my family are ketchup fans, and I could get the little tiny bottles that you would have for a single person household, but we go for the big 500 ml thing, non-existent for probably a month. And that's exactly what's been going on. They've been editing their ranges to purely cope with the supply chain complexity that they're facing. Now, what that has given the packaging printers is long run work. So standard SKUs, simplification of their work, and they've been pushing their presses hard to deliver, which actually takes us back almost, you know, forget 2030. I was surprised at that comment. It's taken us back to 2000 or even the 1990s in terms of the print mix that we've been seeing. Far simpler, long run, can we get it, solid, consistent quality, and the brands are happy. Now, nobody has a crystal ball. If online is going to stay at the 35% level and indeed grow if this COVID continues, I can't say that we're going to see at least the frequency of brand refreshes that we had before, but the retail competitiveness has not gone away. And the only way brands can compete is by selling through both channels with fresh new experiences for the consumer. And therefore my view is we will start to see range creep over the long term, but perhaps not in the next 2 years.
That's interesting. Dave, go on.
I think we're coming out of survival mode. You know, we've had 6 months where, and your statistics show this, Marcus, we would take whatever we could get. We weren't brand loyal at all, either brand of product or brand of source. And I'll be honest, I've not done my own shopping now for 7 months. Somebody else has done it for me. So the brand didn't influence what I've brought into the house at all. What we're going to see after this is a post-COVID Klondike. Everything's up for grabs. Because all those loyalties have been broken. We're going to see people who have got new business trying to hang on to it, and we've seen people who've lost business trying to get it back again. So everybody's going to want our customers. So I see it as a great opportunity actually for brands to compete. Don't just talk about the brand of the product and the packaging of the product, but also the brand of the retail outlet that it's coming from. Yeah. We're going to see people competing for our business for the new, and I'm desperately trying to not use the word new normal, but what we go, the next phase of this recovery, people are going to be very conscious. People have not done a lot of development work because nobody's got budget. Nobody knows how deep the recession's going to be. And they've been holding back on expenditure on everything and anything. They've been building a war chest for the difficult days ahead. So I see it as an opportunity for brands to really get creative to win customers back or to retain the customers they've already had. At the moment, brand on the shelf and on the web as well has had little impact on the purchasing decision. It's well down the decision-making order. As we come out of this and there is product on the shelf, then brands have a place to pay. And in terms of that design and that print, and print runs will get shorter, for sure. But more importantly, it wasn't just that the print runs have gone longer, but it was the need to change, the speed of change. People found this time their supply chains were too long. Printing abroad, forget it. It's printing closer to home now. We're seeing more people now actually saying they've been caught short and they want to bring their packaging or their marketing material closer to where they live. They cannot afford to have that disruption that they had this time round. So I see it as an opportunity. And print is only one of the mediums, but since we've all got a vested interest here in print, I see it as perhaps golden day of print, just a short one, after quite a dark time of actually opportunity. And it will be people who can respond. The people who've done it the same old way, to use your phrase, will not succeed, will not benefit from this. But people who can adapt, people who are agile, will succeed in this period, and their brands will succeed with them. So I see this as a great opportunity for brand owners to experiment, to innovate, and to do something else, to push themselves to the top of the pile. Because throughout all this, we didn't eat any less food. We didn't drink any less drink. The same volumes of product went through. Different formats. We ate more at home and we ate less in restaurants, but the total quantity of food, actually looking at some people's waistlines, perhaps we ate a bit more. But the volumes of food haven't changed. Where we bought it, how we bought it raw rather than prepared. Where do we go next? There's going to be a new phase, and that's all to be grabbed.
And that has a massive knock-on effect with the retail. If you look at the brands like Unilever, who I've worked with for the last 6.5 years, that new product development that Joanna says is, that has that knock-on effect. Like you said, if they're not refreshing brands, then all of a sudden the campaigns slow up. The campaigns slow up to, once or twice a year. That means the print and POS slows up behind it. And,
right.
You were saying about, the knock-on effect. The knock-on effect is huge when you think of it. It is a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
Someone makes a decision not to refresh a brand, and then all of a sudden everything connects behind it. And, we've definitely seen it in the retail areas where, you walk into a store and quite rightly, like David, like you said, and Joanna, ranges have got smaller. Why would you go to a Tesco's Extra and be looking at a shelf of 27 tomato sauces? Sorry, people just want 2 or 3. Lidl and Aldi are famous for only doing 4. Why would you have 27? So I think, like David said, everything's up for grabs. I think everything's changing, and what used to take years to change is now taking months, and what now used to take months to change is now taking weeks. And I think that's what's going to catch a lot of people out. But David, the word that you used, agility, that's the one word that so many people are using at the moment. You've got to have agility. You've got to think fast. You've got to act fast. You've got to change, direction. I'm not going to use the word pivot because that's an overused word, as same as the new normal. But, people have to. You have to make a change, and you've got to go with it, and you've got to go with your gut feeling, and you've got to make changes. So, yeah, we're seeing that all over the retail and FMCG sector.
Okay,
I
and just
concur with Dave, over the I'll call it onshoring. COVID also highlighted the vulnerabilities in supply chains, and I'd agree with you. We have seen onshoring of packaging back from China and Eastern Europe as a result of those long supply chain concerns. So if I dare mention the B word that's going to be hitting us at the end of this year as well, you can look at it both ways, but one could argue that the manufacturing sector might actually get a bit of a boost here in response. And, bringing politics aside, whether we agree with it or not, Brexit's happening at the moment, and the combination of concern over long supply chains and the impact of Brexit could actually mean we start seeing the brands that operate in this country truly investing in the local infrastructure as it needs to be.
So Joanna, just quickly, one of the things that's obviously driving demand in print production, particularly within packaging, is the kind of Christmas sort of period where I guess round about now, typically people will start marketing teams will start designing and thinking and being creative. Has that been or suffered a temporary hiatus? Has that been part of the problem? And marketing teams just not been there? Is that one of the reasons?
Correct. If they're coming back now, and we're not particularly seeing evidence of that yet, there is, the industry, as I said, from a general converter level is doing fine. It's the repro side that is hit. I'm just constantly hearing of delays, postponement and cancellation. I'm just not seeing the green shoots yet. Saying that, I was talking to a client this morning that's in software. They've seen tremendous green shoots in Asia, and they're starting to see it in Europe generally, that business is returning to normal. But I wouldn't get too excited about your sexy promotions this Christmas, because I think, it will be there. But I think you'll probably see a 30% reduction in the general kind of new stuff coming through. And that's just the
golden quarter, as they say, is it's not going to happen. It's not going to be the golden quarter this time.
I think you'll see a lot of stuff regurgitated from last year that did well. And because we're not in-store shopping as much, then perhaps it seems new to you anyway. But typically the brands will pick a theme for Christmas, and all the advertising and so forth will go on, but the physical ranges in store, we just, I don't know, let's take an example. Waitrose with its Heston Blumenthal range, we'll probably see his orange Grand Marnier Christmas cake rolled out once again, as opposed to, I don't know, lemon drizzle Christmas trees or whatever it may be. I just think they're going to have to work with restricted workforces for too long, and that's going to have some ramifications for everybody.
And you think that will be a temporary scenario? Because Dave mentioned the kind of Klondike thing. Do you see the Klondike happening perhaps after Christmas then? So actually is some sort of sense of stability, not normality, but stability comes into play, that perhaps January onwards we start seeing a bit more, marketing and competitiveness. Sorry?
I'm fascinated with Steve's view with working with the likes of Unilever, but I don't mean to be a doom monger, but I just don't see that bounce back. It was chaos, let's be honest. It was absolute chaos in terms of demands onto the print and packaging sector for the packaging industry. Everything was rushed, everything was last minute, very clear calendar in terms of all the seasons and bog offs and 3 for 2s and all that good stuff that related to the retail competition situation. My gut says that if I was sitting on a board of one of these brands and looking at some of the cost savings I've been making in terms of my supply chain simplification, I'd want a bite of that cherry as well as retaining my competitive position. So is it going to come back? Of course it's going to come back. Retail intensity is only going to increase. But I think they're going to take some opportunities to be smarter about it. And I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see 27 ketchups in Sainsbury's anymore. I think we're going to have 5 or 6, perhaps more than the discounters. Do it premium quality, that the consumer, the target consumer for them, feels like they're getting the right product chosen by their retail partner. And we're going to put some streamlining into the industry. But look, it's crystal ball, isn't it? Who knows? But I just can't see us returning to that, I'll call it chaos, that was happening up until COVID.
Before we go to the world of POS, because that's very interesting, I wanted to kind of link in Mark here, because obviously with the world of, you mentioned Primark, and obviously Primark's famous for going and getting some clobber, as they say, and the world of textile, nearshoring or reshoring, and has often been mooted as a thing that's happening, Mark, in the world of digital textile printing in particular. Have you seen an increase in interest there, or what's happening in your world?
Well, we were, thanks Marcus, we were talking a lot up until March about the notion that we would see some reshoring of manufacturing back closer to the consumer. And I think what you said at the very start, I think the quote was from McKinsey piece.
Yeah.
That what we're seeing now is COVID accelerating the adoption of the trends that were already in play, albeit in the very early stages. And I think that what we'll see in the next few years is an increase in the reshoring of manufacturing, and of course I'm just talking about textiles and specifically on this webinar on inkjet print. But what I don't see is the reshoring of the mass production of commodity type products. What I do see is the reshoring of higher value, probably customized products, which could achieve perhaps 20% of the value share in about the next decade, but that might still only be about 5% or 10% of the volume. So we're not going to see, big sock factories coming back, supplying all our retail needs for that. But I can see us reshoring high value products, definitely. And I think I agree with what Joe was saying as well. I think also one of the benefits of Brexit will be that, having experienced supply chain breaks down as a result of COVID, I think we're probably all a bit more risk averse now, and we'll want to have some kind of manufacturing base, whether that's for your socks or for whatever type of product.
Very good. Yeah. And in terms of that, then it starts to come in, you know, we started talking about a little bit about the marketing departments of, you know, to what extent it's a common theme since I've been in the print industry where printers typically say, well, you know, people don't understand print, don't understand what's possible. Might we see through necessity an acceleration of understanding? Before we started talking in this session, we were talking about wallpaper, weren't we, Dave, and about what's possible with Ricoh wallpaper with old brick, and designers suddenly realizing the potential. Will we start to see an acceleration in change there, where actually the digital aspect of production, as you said, the 20% does start to grow significantly across the board, from packaging. POS is already quite well established, isn't it? But then in textile as well. I don't know, Dave, if you want to sort of talk.
We're seeing a lot of brand owners coming forward now.
Sorry, Dave.
So we're seeing brand owners coming forward,
yeah,
to ask what's possible. A lot of them had their fingers burnt, and they're looking at everything and anything that can give them strategic and competitive advantage at the moment. And print technology is one of those things. Now, the brand owners and the product owners don't really care how the packaging is produced, how the point of sale material is produced. It's got to perform. It's got to be the right price. It's got to be in the right place. It's got to be the right time. But how it's produced is incidental to them. That's the responsibility of the manufacturers of the packaging. Which technology they use on any given day to deliver the product is up to them. What's happening is, and you've all been saying it, is that decisions about campaigns, about changes in packaging, are all being left later and later. And that's changing the technologies that are available or suitable to produce that packaging and sale material. It's moving it, as it happens, towards digital because it can respond quicker. It's moving it towards onshoring so that you lose that lead time. But in all of this, the one thing we've not mentioned is there was a huge move to change packaging for environmental reasons. The plastic-free aisle, the move away from UV ink towards food-grade water-based inks. That hasn't gone away. It may have been on hold for a while, but it's actually just pent up. And so we're going to see a huge change in the way things are produced and the inks that are used and the materials that are used and the recyclability. So I see that as another opportunity for change. And that's going to be forced, if not by public pressure, then certainly by legislation. So we're going to see changes there. I've had now 2 companies approach, this is history repeating itself, starting to contemplate doing a Buy British marketing campaign. It ties in with what's going to happen at the end of the year, but it also ties in with the fact that we've all discovered our local farms. We've all discovered the good we can get local because we haven't been able to get our Monge 2 flown in from Africa each day. We bought garden peas from our local shop instead. So there's a whole change in what we find acceptable. And smart companies will respond to that, to public opinion and to that dynamic in the market that says, let's buy local, let's buy British, let's buy what we grow ourselves and save the carbon footprint. Let's have it in plastic-free packaging. Let's have it in recyclable packaging. And all of that is change. So for the producers of packaging and marketing material, you can ignore that at your peril. You're going to get left behind. So I think the industry will split in 2 directions. There will be those who've got an asset and will just sweat it. They'll sweat the asset for as long as they can, but with a diminishing return on it. And there will be other companies that use this as an opportunity to innovate, to invest, to diversify, and to benefit from the future business.
Okay. Steve, you were keen to add in something there.
Yeah, I was just fascinated. Just 2 things. One for David. Dave, what he was saying there is I'm passionate about sustainability. Been in it for a long time on the POS side. We've definitely seen a swing from being plastic free to plastic wrapped, and then I think that will go away. because anywhere you go now, everything's now reduced. So I went to Costa the other day and to get a coffee, which I missed being in lockdown, and everything's now smaller. It's in different packaging and it's in cups and it's all wrapped. And so we've went to a restaurant and there's no salt and pepper anymore. It all comes in wraps. So the pendulum will swing, but hopefully it will swing back to being unwrapped in plastic. And I hope the industry does move to more non-oil based plastics, and we can finally get some volume under some bioplastics. But one thing I want to say to Mark about textiles is we all then are now using face masks. You know, they've now gone from being functional medical grade to now being digitally printed, and people are now luxury brands. Everybody's got a luxury brand face mask. Everyone's now having digitally printed textile face masks, names on, branding on, you know, your best logos on. And you know, that must have a huge demand in the textile industry of bespoke printing for face masks. We might think it's only a small part, but I've seen some websites which are doing huge amounts of business in there.
Yeah, so what you're saying is there's some opportunities there with the actual issue itself, and we've seen that, have we not, very visibly with the sign and graphics industry and kind of social distancing graphics, which I know is slightly old hat now, but what on the shop floor, what are you seeing in the world of point of sale? How are printers responding? And that's a key thing we need to remember, that we had a couple of questions coming up saying what can printers do to sort of add value, provide a better service to the new market that we're in now.
Well, for me, I know Dave touched on it, and I promised at the beginning I wouldn't overuse the word agile or agility, but that people have got to. You know, I've got some very good friends of mine who run very large print companies. People like Hollywood Monster in Birmingham, SMP Delta. You know, that was a big shock. If you take someone like Hollywood Monster, who predominantly did loads of stuff in retail and exhibitions, then all of a sudden that was all gone overnight, gone away, and they made, Simon McKenzie and the team there made, the heart-wrenching thing of, making furloughing people and shutting the presses down, for amount of time. Then all of a sudden, so that was the worst thing that could happen to the print industry. But actually, the best thing that can happen to the print industry is COVID, because all of a sudden we needed to print things. We need to print social messaging, posters and signs, and all the messaging that you see has obviously got to be printed. And then he made an announcement at Hollywood Monster that they had reopened the presses and they were back to double shift 24 hours a day. And you just go, one, hooray for the print industry, and they're a great company. I'm not affiliated with them, not being paid to say it. I just think they're a great company. And now you see what they're doing, and it's incredible the breadth of work they're doing. And when you take a closer look, for me, I just think there's 4 key areas that I would look at and say, if I was advising those sorts of print companies, I would say first and foremost, number 1, creativity. You've got to be creative. You've got to really now set yourself apart. If you're going to be producing the same old print that you did years ago, people aren't going to want it. You've got to have a bit of breakthrough. New materials. Dave was saying, and Joanna was saying as well, we got to find, 6 months ago, were we printing on acrylics and all those different things to make all these different ways of social distancing? No, we won't. So new designs and that new creativity is the way forward. New technologies. Now look, print industry has been investing in print equipment for years. I would just hope that those print pieces of hardware are versatile enough to put multiple materials through, not just fiber-based materials, whatever grade they are, just be as versatile as you can. And then the final piece for me is sustainability. And I do agree with Dave, it might have gone away a little bit, because it always does in either a recession or at times of crisis. But I think this time it's still way up on the agenda. And the clients that I've been working with, over this year, your Unilevers, your Heinekens, your Stanley Black & Deckers, your Coca-Colas, sustainability is still there. It's not going away. They've made bold commitments, and they've made huge commitments to keep it up there. And consumers, they might not be thinking of sustainability, but I tell you what, when someone posts that picture of that turtle in the ocean, not with a carrier bag on its mouth, but a plastic mask, that's when it will change. And that's what we'll see. So it's still there. it will come back, but I think those are the 3 or 4 things I would say, you know, is to be agile, be creative, get the right technologies and still be sustainable. And you know, that's a good way to look at it from me. But retailers are going to be affected. Of course they are. You know, we're seeing retailers closing, Monsoon, Oasis, Go Outdoors, you know, TM Lewins, you know, when you look at all those sorts of things, they've all gone, and that impact. However, there are still really big, lots of stores reopening. I mean, who would have thought, you know, talk about closure, who would have thought John Lewis would not reopen its flagship store in Birmingham, where I live in Solihull. You know, it was its flagship, 5 floors, absolutely beautiful, opened 5 years ago, gone. And those are the sorts of things now where, you know, retail is changing. I do agree with Joanna. I think a lot of online, I think we've got to look at the whole way that online and physical and online merges together. And we're seeing some really big changes in between luxury brands and even if you could call them commodity brands, but they're all adopting the online and a way of connecting with their consumers. And that is only going to be accelerated. I'm afraid anyone who thinks that that is not going to be accelerated, you know, we've seen, I think, Joanna, I haven't got the stat with me, but I think we had 3 years of online growth that was predicted on online in the first 3 months of the lockdown.
Correct. And to your point, I think what's really interesting in retail, and I agree with you, I think a lot of trends that were sort of green shooting and evolving pre-COVID have just, it's like they've been on acid for the last 4 months. Everybody's accelerated. But I think what's really interesting, and I'm quite excited to watch, was one of the trends that was sort of being talked about by brands and retailers at a very kind of thought leadership level was moving the traditional high street shopping experience for consumers into a shopping experience. And what I mean by that is perhaps you would try on clothes in a store but not actually and purchase them, but they would just be delivered directly to your home. So they would just have a standard range in store that people could try on, but actually your size 12 skirt would be delivered directly to your home. So it becomes a bit like a showroom. You can test and trial stuff out, but you don't actually purchase. The other part of that is, bless them, all these grocery retailers that have thousands of square foot of retail space in terms of, you know, the out of town stores, is moving them almost to mall style, where yes, you're doing your grocery shopping, but as you head down the bakery and cooking aisle, there's some sofas at the end, somewhere to have a coffee, to actually buy and eat a bun with a coffee in the supermarket, not round the outside of it, but actually changing the planograms and changing the whole shopping experience into a day out at Sainsbury's. And this has been kind of mooted for some time, and I know there's been some trials in Germany with it. But I wonder whether this is going to be the time where they really start to pare back. What do you get in store? What do you get online? And force the consumer to do both. But actually that becomes an exciting day out, a place to go. So I think a fascinating change is coming.
I think you're spot on. If you look at Sainsbury's, Sainsbury's have now got Timpson's, they've now got Habitat, they've now got Argos, you know, and I wanted to make a point at some point here. I just wanted to, we always do obituaries in things like the BAFTAs and things like that. I would just like to say, you know, rest in peace, the Argos catalogue.
Yeah, had to be mentioned, didn't it?
Not for the printer.
You know, I just look at it and think, you know, I know the world has changed, but you know, nearly 1 billion copies printed. It was only second to the Bible printed into the UK. Unfortunately, it went from about 10 million copies a year to about 3 million copies, and now the whole digital store is going to kick in now for Argos, and we've seen some of the digital things. So, you know, rest in peace, the Book of Dreams. You know,
that's just the latest book that's gone the same way. I mean, Yellow Pages went the same way. It was always going to go that way. Any publication that was out of date before it left the bindery, they're going to endure. And it's to do with the rate of change of the data and the content in it. And if you look at the content of the Argos catalogue, it was having to compete against online offers. There was nothing in that catalogue that you couldn't find cheaper elsewhere. But I think the online model, we've all got very excited. We've talked about how much it's accelerated over what the expectation was. I think there's going to be, like any tsunami, that there's that backwash afterwards. Online purchasing at the moment is very successful because it relies on online delivery. Online delivery only works if there's somebody at home to take the delivery. Now, that when everybody was at home, that was perfect. You know, you guarantee you'd be in for your delivery. As people return to work and leave the home and venture out, it's going to become more difficult to make those deliveries. The model becomes less useful. And you're going to start to see either we move towards the European model where instead of getting our mail, our parcels delivered to the front door, you get them delivered to a local post office and you go and pick them up. We're seeing the growth of the Amazon drop boxes and DHL. All of these courier companies will now have drop boxes at petrol stations where you can go and pick up your home delivery. Food shopping, people have been very happy with the base commodities coming in. You know, the skill level in picking a bag of flour or pasta off the shelf isn't very high, but picking the right ripeness of mango from the shelf, people want to go out and make that fresh fruit selection themselves. So people will go back to doing some of the shopping in person and having some of it done remotely. I just think I don't think there's going to be one solution. I think it's going to be a series of different hybrids that come out of this that work for different people.
Yeah,
I think the hybrid is the right. Is exactly the word I would use in terms of what you're all saying. Is that actually it's defining a digital experience that assists the live experience or whatever. Because I think the reality is retail has become increasingly transactional, hasn't it?
it has,
The experience. Frankly, I mean, I don't like shopping. I mean, you know, for anything really. I mean, there's nothing I particularly enjoy about it. I mean, you know, you got to fight for a parking space. You got to go through particularly now, you've got a queue to even get into a shop you don't even want to go into, frankly. And then you get in there and then you've got to kind of, you know, you've got all these rules and I hate rules. And, you know, it's just horrible, frankly.
I'm with you on this, but
Yeah.
I'm going to put a little dampener on the on the online conversation from just a fashion retail perspective.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I mean, 80% of sales are done in store. 80%, which might go some way to explaining Primark's strategy. And whilst we have seen the pendulum swing massively to online during COVID, and still it hasn't really recovered very much for fashion retail. It's still 35% down, even though some other parts of the retail sector have recovered almost back to pre-COVID levels. I have to say that something like Dave's mangoes, a piece of clothing as well, is typically bought through touch and feel and how it sits on you and all of that. And I think the pendulum will swing back. I think we will have accelerated the progress towards, you know, more online shopping, but it's going to be we're a long way off, becoming a dominant channel for purchasing fashion type products.
Well, what's interesting is Joanna touched on the word, I know you just mentioned it as well, is boring retail is dead. That's the only part of physical retail is dead. The area of retail which people want is something that is engaging and exciting. And I've got to use the word experiential, another one that's over word. So if there's anyone doing bingo, word bingo at home, I've probably just got them a line.
You've got 4 so far. One more for a straight line.
So for me, I mean, there are some people absolutely still smashing it out the park in retail. You know, Primark have just opened a massive new store in Barcelona. Beautiful new store in Barcelona. Apple are opening new stores around the world. Another one in Shanghai. Beautiful one in Shanghai. We're seeing them all over, but a couple of really great examples is Brompton Cycles, Brompton Bikes. I don't own a Brompton bike. Those beautiful British-made folding bikes. They've opened some new stores just lately, which are absolutely beautiful, experiential. They've got roads built in them so you can test the bike in there. You know, absolutely lovely. The other one is Peloton. Peloton, you know, high end, you know, okay, you know, a fitness device, you know, but beautiful. But all of those stores still need signage. They still need print. They still need to be dressed and have those different campaigns and merchandised. And that's what we're seeing is there still is a need for that, the print, you know, is it declining? it's just probably just being used in a different way, and people are just trying different things. You know, digital screens in store. Everyone was saying, yeah, you know, it's the future, it will kill signage off. No, it hasn't. It's actually gone the other way. People don't even see digital screens anymore, you know. So, you know, because they're unless they're used in a very subtle way. So for me, we're still seeing print, we're still seeing imaginative print, we're still seeing POS in store. Even when you go to the grocery retailers, you know, they still need to promote products. You still need to see aisle fins, you know, shelf wobblers. You still need to see primary and secondary packaging, like Joanna was touching on. You know, Marcus, you said you don't like shopping. I must be the only person in the world who absolutely loves grocery shopping. I adore it. I'm when I shop with my wife, the bill goes up 40% because I'm just a typical male shopper, impulse shopper, like that, buy it, away we go. But I'm still seduced in by the packaging. I love the packaging and I love the way it is. I'm in the industry, but I'm still seeing that people are being imaginative. There's some great floor graphics out there. There's an amazing window displays out there. And like Mark said, you go into a retail store when it comes to fashion, you still want to be sold it. You still want to touch the fabric. You still want to be guided around the store. So, you know, I think people's marketing money will just have to work a lot harder. That's what.
Yeah, and it goes back to like the overused word of experience, doesn't it? It's like, if you know, you mentioned Brompton, and there seems to be a top end stuff where brands kind of going, right, I want to immerse you in, you know, what you're investing in, your money. You're paying me extra from a different model. I'm going to give you this, immerse you in this brand experience. Or you're going to a discount at the other end, and you just go, you know what you're getting, and actually they're really popular because they're uncomplicated. You just go there and there are 3,000 SKUs, and you know what you're going to get, and off you go. So it seems to be a polarization, maybe, where you got slightly more of the top end stuff where people are spending money and happy to spend their time. I think that's the key investment, in immersing themselves in it, because it makes them feel good. That's the thing I think we should use, is feelings, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that in essence what brands are giving?
The middle will be squeezed. The boring middle will be squeezed.
Yes.
And you know, when you, unfortunately, I'm not saying this is a good thing, it's a bad thing, but when you see some of the burger chains and the restaurants all going out of business in the middle, because there's no differentiation.
Correct.
You know, Wagamama's I love Wagamama's because it's different and it focuses on something. But if I'm just an Italian chain like Jamie Oliver's, you know, Italian, I can get Italian anywhere. So the thing is I do agree. You'll see a polarization between, you know, top and bottom, and boring mid-level stuff that people have just rolled out. Hundreds or thousands of stores or restaurants will go out of business because at the end of the day, people do want to, especially now we're unlocking. We've been, you know, poor Dave's been in his house for 7 months. You know, he wants to, but will he go out? Will he now venture out, or will he still be reluctant? Just to give you one figure, this week the Retail Gazette posted that even after post-lockdown, footfall in the UK is still only at 50% of previous year. So it's opened, but people are reluctant. Will it go to 100? I don't think it's going to go back to 100% until we got a vaccine. And even then, I don't think it will be. I think we will enter a new level of people venturing out. You know, going on, we haven't even touched on things like going on holiday, but this is about print. But I still think print will be there. It will be in different volumes, and one thing will go up and one thing will go down, and we'll just find new ways to communicate with consumers, whether it is primary or secondary packaging, whether it is in store, whether it's fabric designs. You know, it will just evolve now. That's how I see it.
So if you were going to give advice to printers, because obviously they're used to doing a certain thing in a certain way under, you know, quite a predictable pattern of seasons, you know, what would one piece of advice be to a print company?
You've got to break
servicing
out.
Any of these areas.
You just got to break out of your old thinking, because we like
change your expectations.
Joanna mentioned it. We can't predict. There's going to, I mean, who could predict that Leicester was going to be shut down and now Blackburn and other areas are going to be shut down? We have got to be flexible and agile in our thinking. You've got all printers have got to. You've got to find new ways. You've got to find new customers. Be creative and just accept that this really is a world we live in now, where tomorrow is going to be very different from today, and you can't even predict tomorrow. So just be flexible. just before
printers have to listen to the voice of the customer. They've got to listen to the people that pay their wages. So brand owners to the retail outlets, they've really got to listen to what those people want. And instead of offering what they have, is actually start offering what the customer wants to buy. And their customer is those brand owners, the retail outlets, have got to become responsive, not just in terms of timeline, but responsive in terms of service, and responsive in terms of technology. It's not enough now that you can buy a press, say I'm a printer, this is a product, do you want to buy it, yes or no? The other way around, it's go to their clients and say, what is it you're actually looking for? I'll come up with a solution that delivers that to you.
It's those presses that have the versatility of material, print run speeds, depths, all those sorts of things. And, and just one thing for me is, and Joanna, I bow to your knowledge in this area, but we're seeing a lot of move towards primary packaging becoming the area where all the marketing is on, because it's very quick, it's very easy to put onto shelf. You just rip the front off and it's readily merchandised, ready to go. And that has an impact on POS as well. Do you do shelf strips to go with it? Do you do other things? Primary packaging, I think, is going to be a way of
there's actually an opportunity here. I've talked about this for a long time, but the POS industry and the packaging industry don't talk together very well. You do get the big corrugate boys doing both. But the reality is, what we should have is, I don't know, a Parkside Flexibles up in Yorkshire working with a POS team like, I don't know, Swanline, where they're bringing the design of the packaging, the retail ready and the POS in store all together. Now, the color management guy at the brand may manage that, but actually you could do some really creative stuff if you were working across the primary, secondary and POS substrates and materials to bring true innovation to the market. And there's very, very few companies that look at it quite as holistically as they should do. A lot do kind of, I don't know, take a rice pack, Uncle Ben's rice packs. They'll design the pouch and they'll work with somebody for the retail ready tray, but they're not thinking about the POS promotion in store. And I think if somebody could bring all three of those together in under one room, wow, you could really make a difference in store.
Someone's just made a comment. I mean, we talk about omni-channel. Someone's just made a comment in the chat room calling it omni-packaging.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe the future of print is collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, through the different disciplines. And bringing into the fore, Mark, in terms of any advice you might give to printers within the textile area.
I would pick up on the theme of flexibility. If you've invested, as many have, in inkjet printing on textiles in the last few years, for those who aren't aware, it's been growing at 20% plus now for the last 5 years. I would build your business around your flexibility to do short print runs quickly, your flexibility in terms of design, so that you can offer some levels of customization. I think these are the things that your customers are looking for, and I think it's also some of the things that their customers are looking for, the consumers. And I think flexibility is key, and agility, being quick. I think this is the thing that will play very strongly to inkjet in textiles over the coming few years. It's had a bad year so far, no doubt about that. We've seen some closures in Europe of some major printing factories, and everything was going so well last year. It was growing at 20% plus. But it will bounce back in the same way as I think once we've certainly got everyone vaccinated, it will bounce back.
I think you're right. I think a key thing to a key to a sort of sense of normality will be the vaccine, won't it? Yeah, absolutely. Has anyone got any sort of final comments they might want to make with printers front of mind? Any advice? Go for it, Joanna.
I sort of took a sharp intake of breath at some of Steve's comments on sustainability. I would really put a call out to everybody who's on this, that really spend some time trying to understand sustainability. And I appreciate I've come from a plastics background, and yes, it's fossil fuel based, but I see some horrible knee-jerk reactions going on pre-COVID in terms of swapping packaging formats and materials that actually had worse carbon footprints than the materials we're using today. And I think there's some awful assumptions made about why packaging is the way it is today, not understanding the science and engineering behind it. It is a true science. And you'll all say that about print as well. So as an industry, both print and packaging, I've seen so much infighting on the sustainability topic: plastics versus fibre, renewables, compostables, recycling, you name it. And I think there's very few individuals actually that understand the topic properly and in depth, that we're making the right choices for the future of this industry. And I'll leave it there. I could talk for another hour on that topic in itself.
It's a topic in itself, you're right.
We're doing ourselves a disservice as an industry, not really understanding all the different lenses that you can be looking through. So that's my 2 penneth on that one.
Fantastic. So thanks to you all. An hour has literally flown by, and I knew it would. And so it's been fantastic. And I'm going to follow up with everybody, and they'll get a recording as well of this talk. And hopefully, if anybody wants to connect with any of the panelists, we will link you all up. So thanks so much for being part of it. I think it's been a great session. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marcus.
Cheers, guys. Have a great day. Have a great summer.
Yeah.
Take care.